My cousin and aunt informed everyone that I stole $3,000 in charity funds to cover up their own theft, so I cut them off for good, but 5 years later, they want my assistance with their new business. Hey, so my estranged family contacted me lately after 5 years of no contact, and I proposed a condition that they didn't really agree with, so I'm wondering whether I'm in the wrong here. For context, when I mention family, I mean my cousin and my younger aunt. I'm 27 years old, and my cousin is 23 years old. She was always highly spoiled and got away with everything as a child. My uncle was a bit strict with both of us, but my aunt could never bring herself to say anything to my cousin. It's not that my aunt mistreated me, but there was a definite favorite. Then, while I was in my first year of university, my uncle died from an aneurysm. It was quite unexpected, and we struggled to deal as a family, but we tried. My uncle's death drew us closer together, so my aunt's subsequent behavior was very disappointing. My cousin was just 15 when our uncle died, and it was clear that it had upset her considerably. She began acting out in weird ways, and we had to get her to see a psychiatrist, since something was clearly wrong. Our family was rather laid back, and we had never given her any incentive to rebel against us. But once our uncle died, she began crossing all the lines. She would remain out late every other night without informing my aunt about her whereabouts. She'd started drinking and smoking, and while she never admitted it, we were quite confident she was using narcotics. She got mixed up with the wrong crowd, basically. To get that under control, my aunt had to step up and start fighting against her beloved golden kid. For a while, she did her best to keep my cousin under control. She cut off her pocket money so she couldn't go out alone, but it didn't seem to help. She threatened to ground her, but it didn't seem to bother her, and she was far above these minor punishments. They only started fighting when my aunt threatened to turn them all into the cops. Pot has not yet been decriminalized in our city, so they could face serious consequences, even if we ignore underage drinking and smoking. Even by threatening my cousin, my aunt was scaring her, so she was upset. But eventually, my cousin had to do what my aunt told her and quit everything, including hanging out with her old friends. My aunt forced her to reconnect with old acquaintances in order to get back on track and focus on the future. I last saw my family in person 5 years ago. I'd gone back home for a week to spend time with them. My cousin's institution, my old university, was holding a bake sale to generate funds for some charity purpose that I don't recall. All I recall is that my aunt compelled my cousin to fully participate, and my cousin was on the planning committee. My aunt and I also prepared a number of cupcakes and set up a kiosk to help in our own small way and be there for our cousin. I thought I was doing a good thing. I had no idea what was going to happen later. After the ceremony, I had plans to go out to dinner with a few friends, so I departed immediately, leaving only my aunt and cousin at the university that day. When I returned home after dinner, no one said anything to me, and everything seemed usual. The next day, I returned to campus as scheduled. When I had some free time, I noticed that several people from my old institution had unfollowed me on Instagram. I'd never had a problem with these folks, and I was even friends with some of them when I was at university, so I had no idea what was going on. After racking my brain for a few weeks, I decided to ask one of them what was going on and why they had stopped following me. When I wrote them that message, they responded by telling me that after everything I had done, I should be grateful that people hadn't started blocking me yet. That didn't make sense to me because I hadn't done anything. I tried to ask them what they were talking about, but they did not respond. So I chatted with a couple of people I was still acquainted with from university, but they were so far removed from the scenario that they, too, had no idea. They, like me, hadn't kept in touch with anyone from our year, which was probably a good thing because the news that was going about back home had not reached them. After being unable to make sense of what was going on, I decided to tell my aunt what was going on, and despite my initial doubts that she would be able to tell me the truth, she was the one who eventually described what was going on. By then, about 2 months had passed since the bake sale, and when I told my aunt about how everyone was treating me, she told me she had to be honest with me about everything. So that's when she told me that because my cousin was on the committee, she had stayed back with everyone else to count the money they had made. And I guess when no one was watching, she stole nearly $3,000. It was a significant quantity, so people naturally took notice. They kept calculating and recalculating until they had to accept the painful reality that the money had been stolen. Everyone obviously started suspecting my cousin, but no one said anything. My aunt had already worked out what was going on, so she decided to save my cousin while throwing me under the bus. She made up a tale on the spot, claiming that I must have taken the money while she was not looking, and fled as swiftly as possible because I had reportedly become very careless with money as a result of my gambling addiction. Since my aunt refused to keep sending me money, I decided to keep it for myself and go. She said that she had thrown me under the bus to protect my cousin's bright future. Apparently, I had already moved away for university and only returned home for a handful of days every few months. so it didn't matter what they thought of me. But my cousin had to live with these folks, and if they discovered she was the one who stole money meant for charity, they would never forgive her. So she had to think quickly, and this is the strategy she came up with. She even paid $3,000 out of her own cash on the spot so that they could finish the conversation and no one would find out what my cousin had done. My aunt also begged everyone not to talk about my gambling problem since I was still trying to cope with it, and she didn't want anyone to know that I had grown so desperate that I was willing to take money meant for charity. But obviously people didn't keep quiet about it, and I knew for a fact that one of the people in the same year as me had a cousin who had also served on the committee, so she presumably heard everything and relayed it to her sibling, who then informed everyone else. People weren't exactly upset that I had a gambling issue, but it was a little hypocritical of me because when I was in university, I was a bit of a goody two-shoes and never gambled, drank, or did anything improper or unethical. I believe everyone was upset because even after acting that way at university, it was not beyond me to develop a gambling issue as soon as I left for college and even start stealing to maintain my habit. My aunt's deception to protect my cousin ruined my reputation, but she didn't seem to care. She assumed that because I no longer lived with them, it would not be an issue for me. People who used to know me now thought I was a thief and a gambler, and while I could deal with the fact that they thought I was a gambler, I couldn't stand the fact that they thought I was a thief because of what my aunt had said. I was furious with her, and I told her that she needed to tell people the truth, but she refused. Furthermore, she informed me that I was not permitted to tell anyone the truth, since doing so would harm my cousin's reputation, and she had worked tirelessly to restore my cousin's reputation. She couldn't risk it since she didn't want my cousin to revert to her old habits, which would ruin her future. Apparently, the main reason my cousin swiped that money was to go out with her pals, and since her aunt was no longer giving her money, she had to take these measures on her own. But when they returned home from the bake sale that day, my aunt supposedly told my cousin that this was the last time she would bail her out, and that if she stepped out of line again, my aunt would not hesitate to turn her in and she would be completely on her own. I believe my cousin didn't expect to be caught during the money recount, and that episode served as a wake-up call, so she chose to turn over a new leaf. Or maybe she didn't. I'm not sure because I haven't been in touch with them. Anyway, my aunt and I had a heated argument about what should be done because I didn't like the fact that she had thrown me under the bus for no reason. But she said it didn't matter because the only consequences were that a couple of random people who were no longer relevant in my life had unfollowed me on social media. However, if the truth were revealed, my cousin's reputation and promising future would be destroyed. I was about to graduate from a top university, so my life was set, and the least I could do for the family was to remain quiet about it. It was really aggravating, so I hung up without saying anything to her. For a long time, I battled to accept this and considered whether or not I should tell the truth to everyone by posting it on Facebook or something, but I ultimately opted against it. However, I resolved not to contact my family again unless they reached out to me with an elaborate apology, as my aunt had not apologized even over the phone. She had just insisted that this was their only option and had tried to justify her actions without ever apologizing. So I decided not to talk to them until I received an apology, and that is how 5 years have passed. I graduated a few months after my dispute with my aunt, and my grandparents were the only ones who attended my graduation ceremony. I'm close to my uncle's parents and his side of the family since my aunt's family is from Florida, and she's not as connected to them. After I told my grandparents about what had occurred to my family, they decided to cut relations with my aunt and cousin as well, and finally, the entire family on my uncle's side stopped speaking to my aunt and, by extension, my cousin because she never bothered to contact anyone. So I've had no communication with them for the previous 5 years. I'm not sure what they've been up to, and I wasn't interested because they made it clear that they didn't care about me, so why should I? Anyway, this was the situation until about 5 days ago. My aunt and cousin ultimately reached out to me again, and they continue to do so now, to ask for my support. They wrote me an email since they didn't know my address or phone number, but I hadn't updated my email address, so that's how they discovered me, and they said they were establishing a new business. My aunt was a real estate agent, and my cousin followed in her footsteps. They wanted to start their own real estate company and required my funds because they had heard from a few individuals that I was doing well. They did not misunderstand. I am actually doing rather well. I am the youngest head of a department in my firm, and I oversee the entire marketing department. Therefore, I make a nice living and can easily assist them with finance. But after 5 years, this wasn't enough for me, so I decided to phone them at the number supplied in the email and set my own terms. My aunt aunt was overjoyed to speak with me, which surprised me given that we hadn't spoken in about 5 years, but none of that mattered to me. I was extremely direct with them, telling them that I would only consider their proposal if their apologies were as loud as their disrespect. Even in the email, they just stated that they regretted whatever had happened in the past, not that they apologized for it. Their regret meant nothing to me because I wanted them to issue a public apology and acknowledge the deception that my aunt told me 5 years ago to protect my cousin before I considered becoming an investor in their company. I am absolutely willing to keep my part of the bargain as long as they keep theirs. And I even told them that I was willing to sign whatever papers, contracts, or anything else they needed, but this was the condition under which I would assist them. I wasn't about to give them free handouts because I had worked extremely hard to be where I am now, and my own aunt and cousin hadn't contacted me in 5 years until they needed my help. And if they were ready to be that cold-blooded and greedy, I couldn't see why I should be a fool. I believed I was being fair, but my aunt and cousin have had problems with what I said. They argue that I am being selfish and should let bygones be bygones because, unlike me, they still live in the same city and frequently see individuals from my cousin's university. So even if the truth is revealed now, it will be far worse because everyone will know they lied, and the consequences will be just as awful, if not worse. My aunt still claims that it makes no difference to me if people continue to believe the lie they said, because I don't live there and don't have to see these people on a regular basis. Therefore, it's different for me, but it will ruin their lives. But I assured them that it was not my problem and that I believed I was being fully fair. To me, it's not about whose life will be ruined or whose reputation is more important. It's just about the principle of the situation. They lied about me, and I had to deal with it for nearly 5 years. To be honest, it didn't matter as much to me as it did back then, but the truth must be revealed at some point. There's also the fact that they never apologized to me for the previous 5 years, so they can't expect me to simply hand over the money without expecting anything in return. And obviously, because they demand money from me, I can't ask for any other type of recompense but emotional. I'm just trying to make a deal with them. I don't understand what makes my desire so selfish or unfair. Anyway, I'm curious if everyone else shares my aunt and cousin's feelings about this scenario. AITA for informing my aunt and cousin that I will only invest in their business if they admit to everyone that they are thieves. Update 1. Hello everyone. I'd like to thank you all for your warmth and support. It means so much to me. I've decided to take the advice that most people have given me here. I'm not going to pamper my family anymore, and I'm not going to try to get them to do what I ask. You're right. I don't need to make a deal with them, and I should truly leave bygones be bygones because it doesn't matter to me anymore. I'm doing well in my life, and while I don't mean to boast, I'm certainly doing better than a lot of the individuals who believe the lies my aunt told them about me. I don't need to prove anything to anyone, and I certainly don't need to prove that I am not a thief because I know who I am, and that is plenty. I guess I was trying to bargain with my family because I wanted to hurt and humiliate them. In the last 5 years, it hasn't mattered what others at the university thought of me, but it used to bother me that even after messing me over, my aunt and cousin didn't believe it was vital to talk to me or apologize to me. So I think that's how I was dealing with it, trying to find some form of closure. However, after reading the majority of the responses to my original post, I realized it wasn't worth it. My aunt and cousin's behavior has made it abundantly evident that what I think or feel is of little importance to them. All that counts to them is their personal sentiments, which is why they have not apologized to me even today. I guess I was hoping they'd come to their senses by now, but I was mistaken. Evidently, I'm disappointed and wounded, but that's okay. I've been dealing with this for the past 5 years. I can put up with it for longer, so I'm going to send them an email informing them that I do not want to invest in their firm or be engaged in any way. I wish them the best in their future, but all I ask is that they stay away from me right now. Update 2. Hello? I did it. It's been 7 days since my aunt contacted me again, and I finally sent the email last night after debating with her about the condition I'd set forth and the fairness of it all. It took me a while to send that email, even after my last update, since, against all odds, I was still waiting for them to contact me and apologize in person if they didn't want to admit their mistakes in public and tell the truth. I waited 4 days, but then I saw I was setting myself up for failure again, so I finished it last night. It was extremely emotionally draining to even compose that email, because I knew it was likely the last time I would connect with them voluntarily, because the next time they tried to talk to me, I would not consider it. There was also the fact that I was finally receiving closure after 5 years, but after sending that email, I felt a lot better. and decided to tell my grandparents everything. I hadn't told them about it yet, but I felt it was time. I called them after sending that email and described the whole issue to them. I even told them how I had set a condition for my aunt and cousin, but I eventually decided not to become involved in any way, and they told me how proud they were of me for being the bigger person and simply letting it go. They argued that even if I had donated to their business and reconnected with my family after they apologized and admitted their mistake on social media, it would not have fixed anything. In fact, that would have increased the animosity in our connection, and the only thing that will truly heal our family is a genuine apology from my aunt and cousin, one that comes from the heart and does not require an inducement to apologize. Until then, nothing will be rectified, and as corny as it sounds, they are correct about everything. So I'm really pleased with my decision, and I'm glad I came here for guidance because it proved to be quite useful. Many of you in the comments mentioned that I should have just posted the truth on social media 5 years ago, and that it was silly of me to act like such a doormat and never speak my mind. But honestly, I didn't want to jeopardize my cousin's future in any way. They are still my family, and just because they haven't treated me well doesn't mean I have to be the same way. Like I said, I've always been a goody two-shoes, and I don't think anything will change that. Anyway, I'm going to remain out of this for now and focus on my own business. Update 3. I wrote that email to my aunt a few days ago, and she finally replied today. She stated she really wanted to meet me, as did my cousin, because we obviously have a lot to talk about. They stated that the main reason they have not been able to contact me thus far is that despite asking numerous relatives about where I currently reside, none of them have responded. They've even requested my phone number, which I haven't given them, and they believe we should resolve this in person. In this email, my aunt finally apologizes. She told me that she hadn't thought about me in 5 years and that she still hadn't considered my feelings. She admitted that she had been a terrible aunt, not just to me, but also to my cousin, since if she had just punished her when she should have, the problem would not have gotten so bad in the first place. My aunt claimed that she had always treated me unfairly because I was the older one, and she wanted me to be more empathetic, to help her bear the weight of everything, but she never truly let me be myself. Even after 5 years, she had wanted to contact me multiple times, but she wasn't sure if I wanted to speak with her. She realizes it's a lame explanation, but she was afraid of reaching out to me and discovering that I no longer wanted anything to do with the family. I thought that was a fairly honest email, and it actually came through, so I decided to tell her where I live so they could come over and we could attempt to work things out. I'm not sure whether I'm doing the right thing, but my intuition says I should give it a shot, so that's what I'm going to do. After my uncle died, my aunt is the only remaining guardian I have, and it's an unreasonable fear, but I'm scared that if something happens to her, I won't be able to live with the idea that I never bothered to put things right when I had the opportunity. My uncle was stolen from me suddenly and unexpectedly on a random Wednesday when I was still sleeping in my dorm room, and I constantly think about it. So, if I have the opportunity to make things right with my family, I intend to do so. Update 4. Hello everyone. Many people were skeptical of my decision to invite my family home and try to work things out with them, but I explained why I did so, and now that I've met them, I don't regret it. So, a few hours ago, my aunt and cousin came to my place and I invited them in. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. It was quite awkward for the first few minutes, but after some small conversation, my aunt just remarked, "Who are we kidding?" and hugged me tightly. I could feel her sobbing as she hugged me, and she continued apologizing. My cousin also sat on the couch and cried quietly, and of course, if everyone else was sobbing, I couldn't hold back my own emotions. Both of them expressed deep regret for how they had treated me over the previous 5 years, and stated that no amount of apologies would ever make up for it. The fact that I had bothered to invite them here to clear the air was a big issue for them. My cousin thanked me for taking the blame for her back then, and never revealing the truth, even though I could have done so simply, and it would have been more credible for others. But I opted not to. I chose to protect her even though both of them had treated me horribly. They said they wanted to start again with me, and to show how serious they were. They said they didn't want any investment from me. They would manage on their own since they don't want me to believe that I'm just a source of income for them. They only wanted to share the news of their new business with me, and had previously hoped for an investment, but they now realized that they had been selfish. They were the ones who had only considered themselves, not the other way around. I'm not sure what triggered this awakening, but I'm glad we had this chat. And while we still have a long way to go, this is a start. We are going to try to stay in touch and restore these shattered relationships. I've also discussed it with my grandparents, and they believe it's a wonderful decision, so I'm glad I did it. People make errors, but those who forgive when the time comes make a bigger impact, so I'm hoping for the best right now, and we'll see where it goes.